Well, hello again. Sorry, we have to go without the Prezi, but it'll be just as entertaining because Pieter is up next. So, anyway, so this is kind of a long story. The College of Computing and Engineering and Construction and the Cogn College of Business started to collaborate on this study about a year ago when Pieter approached Sherif and was asking really if there was any way to get additional data, to get more data. So what started happening is then Sherif involved two of the graduate students, and they are now working on their thesis on this study. And the study is looking at the relationship between tweets and returns, okay, and stock market returns. So it's where our contribution is unique is that we're using individual stocks and we're using intraday data. That means minute by minute data. We're also looking at a bidirectional relationship. So that means, do tweets affect returns or do returns affect tweets? Okay. So putting that in the current context, if Len is tweeting, okay, does that affect the conference or does the conference affect Len tweeting? Right. Or does, if GE is moving on a particular day, does that affect Twitter activity or does the Twitter activity about GE affect the return? Okay. Of course, now we're more interested in the second one because there's potential to actually make money. Okay. So we look at that bidirectional relationship. This is important in finance. Why? Because there's a ton of studies that actually show that a large proportion of investors are using social media content to make investing decisions. Whether that is a good thing, I am personally not convinced. So, but there's one study, the Cogent Research, that found that 34% of affluent investors use Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc., to actually make their personal and investment decisions, at least to some extent. Another study found about 40%, and the largest one that I've seen is about 70% of investors use this content. There are additional studies that are going to come out of this. We can think of at least of 4 or 5 others. The current study is already under review at a journal, and we found a strong relationship for the 30 stocks in the Dow both ways. The stronger relationship was from the tweets to returns, which is what we were hoping for. About 90% of the stocks in some way affect tweet activity in some way affects the return of 90% of the stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Okay. About 16 stocks are affected, the tweets of those stocks are affected by the returns. So the relationship is stronger from tweets to returns than it is from returns to tweets. Okay. One follow-up study that we're going to do relates to moods. So we're going to have 10 different moods, so like loneliness, sadness, anger, happiness, etc. And we're going to look at how the moods of the tweets affect the stock returns. And there's some interesting literature out there. Again, our contribution is going to be that it's intraday data. But the literature that is out there so far suggests that extreme moods, so extreme happiness or extreme anger, both sides of the spectrum affect the stock price negatively. Okay? So people are either very angry or very happy. That's not good for trading. Okay? So don't trade when you're in a highly emotional state. There's an independent study that actually finds that the state of calmness, the calmer you are, has a very high correlation, 87.6%, with the ups and downs of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So that's pretty amazing. So the calmer you are, the better you are at trading. And one more, a very negative, if there is a study that finds that negative moods are better than positive moods. So negative traders in a negative mood trade better than those in a positive mood. I don't know if I would agree with that, but anyway. About the methodology, Pieter will tell you about the complicated Beck-Garch model that we use for this.
Not that complicated. Good morning, my name is Pieter. About a year ago, I started this process about, kind of combining some data that I couldn't get my hands on relative to, of course, the data that is, proprietary typically, and it costs you $150,000 a year just to get to. So I decided that, there's got to be somebody who can help me with that. So I emailed Sherif, and he was, of course, looking around and decided that maybe he would be interested in himself. That was about a year ago, so lots of meetings, of course, followed through with that. We decided that, let's just start with something. He got some graduate students involved, and now the project, of course, has so many ideas floating through it that we have probably 20 or 30 papers in the future that could easily be written just based off, getting all the information together. Now, like I said again, we're talking a little bit about the model, and the model itself, like I said again, doesn't, what you typically would use in any particular financial research, didn't really lean well for this particular kind of data, because you understand, of course, minute by minute, of course, and specifically with prices, which tend to be very, very, fluctuating, also known as volatility. Basically, you get very, very strange statistical significance just by looking at it and relating it to the other data that you're looking at. And specifically tweets that, come in at various times. I mean, there's no synchronicity, so to speak. It just comes in any particular second, so you have to kind of lean it up in some way. And you have certain periods, believe it or not, there are definitely stocks and companies and products and brands that nobody really cares for. So you will never see a tweet, for instance, on United Health. There's no information whatsoever because nobody cares about that. And they do care about the time, of course, that something will happen with the Obama administration. Then they might tweet about it just a little bit, but there's not a significant amount. Now the problem with my modeling is that I couldn't use zeros. So I had to do some transformations, and I had to make some changes and make it all fit. Now the thing is with the model itself, the data that you're looking at has what they call heteroscedasticity, which means it just behaves very erratically. It's just all over the place. And to fit that with other parameters, so I had to use what they call a gauge model. Now let me just basically tell you what the acronym stands for. It stands for Generalized Autoregressive Conditional Heteroscedasticity. And I see people that are thinking, I know what that is. Probably not. It doesn't really matter because I didn't know it either. It was me about 10, 15 years in my obscure PhD program. We talked about it a little bit. So I had to kind of reinvent myself in that sense and learn that particular model. The thing is though, the nicest thing about it, it doesn't really test for the first moment, so just looking at the returns, it tests for volatility. Which is great because again, as long as you look at volatility, that would mean that if some activity takes place and has a relationship on that particular variable, then you can say, oh my God, this is interesting because now I can see that maybe the innovations that take place in one particular model variable will have an effect on the other. Now, the thing is, of course, there are extensions that you have to look into, and of course, the model that I used wasn't just a straight gauge model. No, I had to use what I call a gauge back model, just to make it a little bit more complicated. The nicest thing about that is that you can do what I call cross-diagonal switches, because you are changing what I call the orthogonality just a little bit in order to make the changes happen. Doesn't really mean anything, it just means that we had 16 stocks within those 30s that actually had a sort of relationships from the tweets to the returns. Actually from the returns to the tweets, from the returns to the tweets, and then we had 27 that went straight from the tweet to the returns. Now the thing is though, that you might not think it's interesting at all, and that's of course, with anybody, and in research, there's only one person that you really care for that reads it, that's typically the editor at the journal, and maybe 3 or 4 other people, and of course, as long as you get it published, who cares really? But the thing is that it's under review right now. Like Oliver said earlier, moods are very important to us as well because we have kind of an algorithm that we're using that is basically filtering all these particular tweets. Because just to give you an idea of the massive amount of data, when we started in 2 weeks, because you can't really use anything historically because you have to pay your arm and your firstborn just to get that first data. They go through what I call gnip.com, which is kind of the only particular person or organization that allows Twitter to basically buy that data. So if you want to go back in the past, you have to pay for it rather heavily. Now the thing is, of course, when you go with the data that goes forward, then even in 2 weeks, we had a 2-week span because that's all the time that we had, so to speak, we just caught about 2 gigs of data a day. That in a while gets kind of big. So just to give you an idea of the magnitude, we had about 150,000 combined pairs of the 30 stocks relative to the tweet data, minute by minute, only over 2 weeks. So we want to progress this particular problem, then we have to get more data storage. That's another problem, of course. Plus the fact, of course, I don't really know that much about data storage. I can tell you honestly, of course, we don't speak the same language. I don't know what language that he's speaking, but it's not English. I'm a second English speaker, so to speak. I wasn't born here, so for me it was even more difficult to understand. Even emails that we have between the 2 of us, Oliver and I have to sit together and talk about exactly what Sherif had told us because we still don't understand it. I have never heard the word Hadoop or MongoDB in my life, and I still do not know what it means. But it doesn't really matter. It just basically means that we meet each other at the end. We see the data, that's all I need, and of course that will be perfect. And that's the nicest thing about collaboration is because you can actually continue finding ways to get the data that you require, and you don't really have to go that far, which is the nicest thing about the collaboration. I'm going to hand it over to Sherif. He's going to talk a little bit about the intricacies of getting the data, which I don't really know anything about, but he will hopefully be able to help you out with it as well.
Thank you, Pieter. My name is Sherif Elfayoumy. I guess many of you had hard time pronouncing my name, seeing it in the agenda for the meeting. But when Pieter reached out, it was a year ago. It was early fall of 2013. So that was more than a year ago. And when he reached out, he was looking for data. And coincidentally, at that time, I was thinking, what interdisciplinary project or research idea would involve many people from many colleges within campus? I have had the pleasure working with other teams, interdisciplinary teams in the past. And I was thinking that big data, that trend that is maybe taking many campuses and taking the research of many people in that direction, could be that area that involves everyone. And when Pieter reached out, I thought, well, maybe that is a confirmation. So I started forming the interdisciplinary program for big data analytics, though really many of us don't consider their data to be big, but there are some characteristics that would describe the data to be big, such as the difference in variety, the difference in velocity, and the difference in volume from day-to-day data that we use. The idea of using big data in our research is to allow us to do larger scale studies, to do more comprehensive studies. So when Pieter reached out, those data sets that he was looking at those time, I think subscribing to them would cost $150,000. So I told him, well, we can get this data. We can get the same exact data. And that's exactly what we did. So we get data from Twitter. Everyone that tweets about any of those 30 stocks traded on the on the Dow Jones, we get tweets about them. So we are constantly listening to those tweets during the study, of course. And we are getting the stock price, not just the price, the size, the bid price, the asking price, and you can see that my language has improved. I now can understand finance just a little bit. So we've started collecting data minute by minute from Yahoo Finance, and we were amassing about 2 gig to 3 gigabytes of data on a daily basis. So we had to, of course, plan for the storage and for the processing, so things happen timely. We have used an approach at the beginning called MongoDB, that is non-relational data storage, that is supposedly more scalable. And we are now transforming from that into something else called Hadoop. We're using something called Hortonworks, for those of you who care. But the idea is we are trying to solve a computational problem, that is, how do we store that much data and how do we process that much data on a timely fashion such that we can produce results that some other people from other discipline would really like to use. So Twitter allows us to get the data through their API. They communicate back to us not just the 140 maximum characters that you see in a tweet. Tweets are that short, but they give us what's called a JSON object. That JSON object is like page long, and we had a screenshot of how that looks. It is really rich in terms of the information it communicates. I know that currently in our study we are looking only at the text. We are applying some natural language processing algorithms to get the 10 modes identified. We can see that there are many future opportunities for this research, such as going after longer period of time, including modes in our analysis. So there are many other opportunities. What I think we wanted to close with is, I think that's about time to close, that interdisciplinary research has lots of challenges, and I just wanted to bring to your attention. And one of those challenges is that we speak different language. We started speaking much different language. We still do speak different language. We are getting a little bit better, so they understand when I say Hadoop what it means, at least roughly, and I understand what the stock volatility means, at least roughly. I'm not a trader. I don't even invest in the stock market. So our language has gotten a little bit better. One of the differences that I wanted to show you in the slides, but Bersy didn't help, was when they designed their slides were all squares. And when I designed my slides, they were all circles. So from the get-go, you can see that we are different. We are really different. And we appreciate that difference. Maybe that combination is what makes our team unique in that sense. One of the other factors that I wanted you to also recognize when you do interdisciplinary research is that you're going to have more than oneself working in the project. And these guys also have publication requirements. So I wanted to publish in my field, and they wanted to publish in their field. So I have to be cognizant of their needs, and they have to be cognizant of my needs. So we have to find that happy medium where everyone can get rewarded from the time and effort. Of course, working with more than one person requires some scheduling effort. And we have happily solved this problem by meeting 7:45 in the morning. And we have been doing that for a year, bi-weekly, for at least an hour. The three of us and my two grad students. So that is also one of the challenges. There are some rewards that come along. One of the rewards is our combined experience is very unique. And we believe that no one else has this type of data with the granularity that we have in our data. So that's great. When we talk, more ideas come along. So we, I think, have a much bigger plan for our project. And if it succeeds, you won't see us here. Probably we'll be very rich that we won't come talk here again. Thank you very much.